The Braves are the pinnacle of success in their sport. Unfortunately, their brothers, as in the other teams in Atlanta, the professional sports teams, the Falcons and the Hawks primarily, are not. Big Low Country, our big fella, he is going to join us afterwards to talk the Falcons draft, to talk about this whole New England Patriots, Robert Kraft, Bill Belichick saga. We're going to get his opinion, so that's coming up next. Stay with us. But we're going to talk about the Atlanta Hawks, and yes, I banned the Atlanta Hawks from this show. But they are back because it's the offseason. The offseason is the most exciting part of the year for the Hawks right now because, I mean, we say it every year, big changes are coming, and then they just don't come. You know, I've been saying this for quite literally for 2-3 years. You know, they should have done it 2 years ago, didn't do it. They should have done it last year, didn't do it. Now they're in a really bad spot because the Spurs own all of their future picks, so it's hard to really rebuild. But it's so overwhelmingly obvious, and it's been this way ever since the deal happened, that Dejounte Murray and Trae Young don't fit together. One of them has to go. Now, the expectation is the Hawks are going to deal Dejounte. You know, obviously people are going to talking heads, especially from other teams that want Trae Young on their team, are going to bring up Trae Young. And there is, you know, an argument to be said. Listen, Trae doesn't play the best defense. You're going to get a lot more for Trae Young than you're going to get for Dejounte Murray. So if you are trying to build around a team, maybe you do go with Dejounte, kind of switch the philosophy of the team and get all those picks and try to rebuild from the ground up. I understand that argument, but the only thing that we can all agree on as Hawks fans that want to see this team get out of the gutter or this treadmill that they're on, which is the worst thing you can be in the NBA, is that one of them has to go.
Yeah, I think that's abundantly clear. Everybody knows that, whether Trae Young and Dejounte Murray, Quinn Snyder, anybody from the Atlanta Hawks want to acknowledge it or not, it's the elephant in the room. And I think what you said is perfect, that I could argue either side. If you were like, argue for DJM or argue for Trae Young, I could make an argument for both of them. And that's why it makes it so hard, is because they're both great players. Like, Trae Young is a superstar. Dejounte Murray is a star. The fact is the fit is wonky, and the narratives picking up about Trae Young only were exacerbated last night against the Bulls. He had a horrible outing, while Dejounte Murray looked like he was the only one out there who gave a damn. And the Hawks looked lifeless. And, you know, granted, down Jalen Johnson, who we all think has star potential. Onyeka Okongwu failed a little, or disappointed a little bit this year, but he's still better than Bruno. You know, we were hobbled. Trae Young was back for a week. And I think that is very unfair to Trae.
Absolutely.
Where people are just criticizing him and stuff. It's like the guy was back for a week. You know, Jimmy Butler gets all this praise for playing hurt, playing on short rest, same with Joel Embiid. Trae Young does the same thing and struggles, and it's like, oh, get Trae Young out of here. He's such a liability. I hate that stuff. But one thing is absolutely true, like you said, Chase, and I'm going to leave it with a question. Changes are coming, but it's maybe not so much a question, just a statement. How could you have confidence in a team, this organization ran by an owner who says one thing, does another? Landry Fields, a first-time GM, Kyle Korver, a first-time executive. How do you have confidence?
No, there's zero confidence in this organization. Anybody that does have confidence is delusional, and you're way too nice on the organization because you should be holding these guys accountable for the decisions. I mean, if there's one thing that I think a lot of fans don't do enough, maybe not don't do enough. It's weird because they do it in situations where the Braves, where they'll complain about Alex Anthopoulos, who should never be complained about, but you don't hear it enough almost when it comes to guys like Arthur Blank and the wrestlers. And listen, there should be zero confidence in what the Hawks are doing. They have no picks coming up. They're at a crossroads with two stars that probably should have never been paired together in the first place. We all thought it. Everybody thought it when it happened, is like, how is this going to work? I mean, I think we might have underestimated how poorly it was going to work. I mean, there's never been a moment where I've watched Trae Young and Dejounte Murray and said, dang, this is working well. Like, they don't feed off each other at all. It's, you get the ball, I get the ball. You get the ball, I get the ball. There's no team camaraderie there. It's ISO ball, you get the ball, I get the ball. Trae Young's in the pick and roll. Yes, he might involve Clint Capella or one of the big guys and throw an alley-oop or kick it to a guy out. But when that happens, Dejounte Murray and Trae Young are basically out of the play. You're playing 4-on-5. And that it's been that way the entire tenure. And it's been a miserable fit. It was a miserable fit before last year. I think they were hopeful Quinn Snyder could fix it. There's no fixing this. It needs to end. And I think that's the one clear thing. But you got no picks. You do have this year's pick, which is number 10 overall.
Yeah.
Maybe you can do something with that. Maybe you can trade that pick. Maybe you get lucky in the lottery. It moves up closer to 5, or God forbid, we are due a number 1 overall pick. I know it's like 3-4%, whatever it is, but you never know. And then you might get the Kings pick if they win tonight and get in the playoffs. So there's some room to maneuver. You're going to have to figure out what you want to do with DeAndre Hunter. You're going to have to figure out, Clint Capella, what do you want to do with him? But, the days of just letting this happen and keep like pushing it to next year, like something's going to change. I mean, it literally is the definition of insanity.
Well, the hope is that Tony Ressler wakes up, because there is room to move, so to speak, maybe not draft capital wise, or say a young prospect to potentially entice a star to come to Atlanta, but you can still go into the luxury tax. And again, it's a big if Tony Ressler feels like he wants to do that. He's got his little Gulch project now, which is going to be built between Mercedes-Benz and State Farm. It's going to resemble something like the Battery, and it's going to be great and all, but it feels like that was a priority for him, and now the Hawks could be on the back burner. I hope that's not the case. In terms of an influx of cash is what I'm saying. I'm not saying his focus. I'm just saying putting money into the product, and the Hawks can get out of this. Like they still have guys. You have Dejounte Murray or Trae Young, whichever way they go. And I think we should argue about one side or the other in the coming weeks about who they should go with. And you still got, maybe you could package, a guy like Onyeka Okongwu. I know his value is not extremely high, but there's still young pieces. Jalen Johnson is certainly a piece to build around. The luxury tax is still there. Quinn Snyder is still a good head coach. And I'm trying to be optimistic about this, but I think you can get out of this if you're very careful. Now, the runway is narrow. It's very narrow path. You have to make every right turn, and I'm not even quite sure I could paint you a picture of getting out the other side.
I don't even think it's that difficult. I mean, I was looking at this the other day. First of all, hopefully the Kings win and you have 2 picks, one being in the top 10. You trade Dejounte, you're well below the luxury tax threshold, well below it. I mean, you're talking about $30-35 million below it. You trade Trae Young, you're $40-45 million. I think Clint Capella's movable. That's another $20 million. I think DeAndre Hunter's movable. That's another $20 million. I think you have movable pieces on this roster. I mean, even if you wanted to move Bogey, now I think Bogey's one of the most important pieces, but I'm just saying, like, there's a lot, like, there's not too many pieces on this team that aren't movable. Like, there are guys that have performed. Yeah, that there's no like albatross contracts where you're like, holy hell, like that guy's immovable. Like, we're absolutely screwed. So there's ways this could be done, but they gotta like get on their horse and do it. They haven't done it yet.
No, and like you said, DeAndre Hunter, he performed terribly against the Bulls, but other than that, had a very good season. So if you were saying immovable contracts, it would be him, and he's coming off one of the better seasons of his career, whereas Clint Capella is what he is at this point. You expect him to add anything on the offensive end, that's your own damn fault. That's the Hawks' own damn fault, but he's still a reliable rebounder and a good defender, can anchor your defense, and that is valuable in today's NBA. So you're absolutely right. They're not like strapped where they're going to have to offload more draft picks just to get rid of a contract.
And you have draft picks. So if you want to throw Dejounte Murray in the 10th pick and maybe that lands you a star player, I don't know. But there are moves that you can do with
They got to do them, though.
It's not that ridiculous.
We don't need ancillary pieces. We need wholesale changes.
They just have the wrong 28-year-old making the decisions.
It should be us.
It should be us instead of Nick Ressler. But we'll see what happens in the next couple of months.